Opposite Gloves here, and this is the 6th video in the Kontakt from the Ground Up tutorial series. And today we are going to be talking about the Files tab and the Options tab. We're going to talk about what they do. So, and we're going to save Purge for its own menu, its own video, because Purge is an important concept and it deserves your attention individually because it can make a big difference later on, maybe after you've completed a project. But on our Files tab, we have a new instrument. So you click that and it automatically creates a new instrument. That's one way to do it. Another way to create a new instrument is you simply grab your sample and drag it on there. Oh, this is an unsupported format. But anyways, drag your sample and boom, it creates a new instrument for you. So that's another way of doing it. We'll talk about instruments a little bit later. We have instrument banks. This is also something we're going to cover in a separate video just because it's kind of a handful. Honestly, I recommend using multis, but there is a reason you'd want to use banks. But for now, we're just going to focus on this is how you could create a bank. You also have load if you are looking for something to load in particular, and for whatever reason, you don't want to go to your file browser and do it this way. You can go there and do that. You could do load recent, any of the more recent stuff you've used, you can open here. New instrument from list. This is your quick load stuff. So if you have your quick load, and you have folders in here, you can go in there and you can open them from here, but that would kind of defeat the option of the quick load. It's just like another place you could go. Now, if you have a multi open, which as we talked about before is like a whole bunch of things, and you want to save it, you can go to save multi as, and you can save it and it will be saved as a .nkm, which is really nice. And then you can add that to your quick load option under multis, or you have your save as option. And let's say you have an instrument you've made settings and changes to, maybe drastic changes, and you don't want to overwrite your file, but you think the changes are substantial enough that you want to keep them in your own, your own deal, but a totally separate file. So you leave them the original untouched. You can save your instrument as, and then it will be saved as a completely separate thing. You can have that and do that, and it's great. Save as default multi. I don't know exactly what this one does, but I'd imagine that it's a multi that would open up by default. I don't know. I don't use that. You also have reset multi. Again, it must have something to do with that. Usually when I assume if I've got a whole bunch of things open at the same time, I'm probably going to want to hit this, erase, discard all instruments, and then it will get rid of them. That's what I assume it does. And if I had a default multi, it would probably go to whatever that multi was. That's my guess. I don't know. Those settings I just don't use. So we have batch resave. And so if you have your samples in an incorrect location, you would use this to help solve some of that. And collect samples, batch compress, also has to do with saving instruments and loading instruments. And you have your manuals. That's the help option. You also have your options, and you click on that. We already talked about reset size, which can be very important. Show mapping and key switches on keyboard. If you have, this will become important later on, but if you have an instrument with different groups and you use keys to switch between the groups of samples, this will show you that on your keyboard. Otherwise, you will not see it. Auto refresh browser. Let's see. You can actually change the font size. Pretty cool. Under the engine, we can set so whenever you load up an instrument, it always comes out at -6 decibels because of our setting here. You can change that to 0 decibels if you really hate the -6 decibel thing. Now you have CPU overload protection. So I have mine off because my computer's pretty fine. Honestly, it's worth just keeping off. Every time you run Kontakt, a second program actually boots up in the background that it just manages things, and its running is not super important. Like, it's super important for the running of the program, but it doesn't really affect your CPU usage. Just so you know, that's running in the background. But I believe this has something to do with that. I can't totally remember. But anyways, if you have CPU problems, maybe touch that. You have multiprocessor support, so you can set your cores here. And then some MIDI options and stuff. You have handling. This is where your keyboard, use computer keyboard for MIDI playback. So if you don't have a MIDI controller hooked up, you can turn this on and it will use your MIDI controller to trigger the keys down here. Keyboard velocity sets the velocity range of your keyboard. Let's see if there's any other important ones really in here. Default root for new zone keys. A lot of these things, when you come through, are going to start really mattering when you start creating instruments and messing with things. And if we go over here to load, import, we have all our loading file settings and stuff. This is where you know if you're in these menus if something is not working right, but usually you're fine. You can also go in here and you can update sample locations and add file directories and do a whole bunch of things like that using the database. And then you have your memory. And then you have memory. Nothing too exciting in here, but this can affect your buffer load. So I'm not going to go over it in detail right now, but if you you can have it set up so that it loads differently, putting different things in a different priority. Again, not super mega important, but that's the file and the options. So hopefully that gives you an idea of just where things are so that if something goes wrong later, you can go and find it and fix it. If you have any questions about that, drop them in the comments. If you're having technical difficulties and you've looked everywhere, I'll see what I can do. No promises though. And have a blessed day.